Church tradition teaches that around the year 300, there were 40 Roman soldiers that were under one of the most brutal Roman generals that ever lived. Well, there were more that were actually under him, but 40 of them heard the gospel, were converted, and trusted Christ, became Christians. And when this general heard about this, he was enraged. Like I said, he was one of the most brutal generals that had ever lived. He was completely opposed to Jesus and to the Gospels. And so he condemned them to be frozen to death out on the lake, to be stripped naked, put in chains, marched out onto this frozen lake in the middle of winter, and to stand there until they were frozen to death through the night. And so that's what they did. The other soldiers gathered around them. They stripped them naked. They doused them down with water. They put them in chains, and they let them out into the middle of the lake. And it was, obviously it was cold enough for them to be able to be walking on the lake. The ice was frozen solid, and it was snowing, and the wind was blowing, and it was below freezing temperatures, probably maybe even below zero. And they're standing together out on this lake, freezing to death, and they're huddled together trying to keep warm. When the general comes out and he says, "All right, this is your punishment, but I've set up a tent out on the edge of out on the shore, and there's a fire in there, and there's warm things to drink, and there's blankets, and you can dry off, and you can get warm. All you've got to do is deny Christ, and it's yours. Just come on in." They said, "Christ has given everything for us. He laid down his life for us, and we're willing. If that's what it takes, we're willing to lay down our lives for him." So the general goes back to his tent, stays for a couple hours, comes back out a couple hours later. All 40 of them are still standing there. And he's confident at this point. It's not going to be long. They're freezing to death. They're huddled together for warmth. The wind is blowing. The snow is falling. And he reminds them again, "I've got that tent right over there. There's a fire. There's blankets. There's towels. You can dry off. You can warm up. You can have something warm to drink. All you got to do is deny Christ, and it's yours." And again, they refuse, and he goes back to his tent, comes out an hour or two later, and there's 39 men there. And at this point, he's not one. They're just going to start falling one by one now. And he reminds them about what he set up for them. He says, "All you got to do is deny Christ, and it's yours." He said, "Jesus gave up everything for us. Yeah, one of our brothers fell, but we're not going anywhere. Jesus laid down his life for us, and if that's what it takes, we're going to lay down our lives for him." Well, at this point, it's getting late, and the general is confident that one's fallen. They're just going to start going down, one by one. So he goes back to his tent and he goes to sleep. And he wakes up the next morning and goes out onto the lake to see if anybody actually stayed. And when he gets out there, there's 40 men on the lake, frozen to death. And he looks off to the side. He sees one of his soldiers' uniforms, his armor and his weapons and his uniform. And he realized what had happened. What had happened is the testimony of these men that were willing to face death for Jesus had so affected him that he came to Christ and he believed. And he took all of his clothes off. And he went and he joined his brothers. He gave up his life for the one who had given up his life for him. I don't know if God's ever going to call any of us to do anything like that. I hope he doesn't. But that's power. And we can live with that power. Even if God doesn't ask us to face death or persecution for him, we can live with that same power that we have. Who can come against us? What can stand against us? God has defeated death. What else is there? We serve an awesome God.